Some things to think about if you're planning on leaving your country, the U.S. or England or Australia or some country that you feel is not a good place to be. From those in the U.S. and maybe even England, you feel that it's Babylon, Mystery Babylon, and you want to get out of there. A lot of people that I have met over the years, because it's been about 12 years since I left, have not prepared properly. And so, to not give a lot of details, I would just say that you shouldn't rush out of your country. I've seen people say, well, I'm just going to have faith, I'll trust in Yahweh, and I know He'll provide everything, and they have maybe $500 to $1,000, and they're not very prepared. They don't know where they're going exactly, or they come very quickly. And things start to go from bad to worse for them very quickly. So I would say that you need to plan. I've met other people who do make a good plan. I did this myself. I did still make a lot of mistakes, and I'd like to share those with you so that you don't need to make those mistakes. And I've seen others make those mistakes too. If you make a good plan, well, first let me just say, if you feel moved by the Father and Yeshua to leave by some type of, you just feel it in the Spirit, I can't say don't leave immediately. I can only tell you what I've seen happen to people who leave with very little preparation, not enough money, and no way really of making a living once they're out of the country. Usually what happens, I've seen what would you call it, a direct relationship between the lack of time preparing to leave and how fast that person or people have to go back to, let's say, the United States. When people rush out of the United States, they rush back, and usually and almost always in a much worse situation. They're usually broke and they have to go live in a relative's, a sister, a brother, a mother's or father's basement or something like that. So if you really are serious about leaving and you want to make it work, then you need, sorry, the video quality is bad. Internet connection here. I hope you can hear me though. You need to prepare. You need to try to save some money. A rule of thumb, if you can do it, is maybe $5,000 per person that's leaving. At a bare minimum, it would be much better if you had around $10,000 per person. Now, I know for some of you that probably sounds like an impossibility and just so much money. But some people have told me, well, I'm not making any money here in the U.S., so I might as well leave, because they figure it can't get much worse. Well, let me tell you how much worse it can get. When you leave the U.S., most likely you don't speak the language of the country that you're going to. You have to leave every 90 days to keep your visa valid, your tourist visa valid. You have to go out of the country, stay out of the country for a day or sometimes up to 3 days, and then come back in. So that's a little bit of a costly trip. You don't know the rules and the laws and the ways things work in that country. And what job can you get? If you think you can go and do manual labor and get paid, in most other countries of the world, manual labor is paid very poorly. Where I am living right now in Panama, a manual laborer who works out in the tropical sun all day gets about $1 to $1.50 an hour. So they could work all day and make about $12. This is the reality of the situation. So you have some type of soul. If you speak English fluently, which I'm sure most of you do if you're listening to this message, then you can go online and you can get a TEFL, TFLE, or a TESOL, TESOL. Basically, it's a certificate to become an English teacher. You can get them very easily online for between $150 and $300 or $400, depending on which program. And then when you leave the country, you can apply at different language institutes or English institutes and get a job there. If you have a BA or a BS or some type of college four-year degree or more, then that will be good enough usually. But you can also get the English certificate if you want to just feel more secure in teaching English as a second language. Don't worry if you don't think your English is very good. Just the fact that you're a native speaker will make you a prime candidate to be hired. So you have to think about so many things when you're planning on leaving. But most of all, you're going to need money. You're going to have to pay your bills. You're not going to be able to live on your good looks. You need to have some type of plan. So save money and don't rush. I wouldn't rush out of the country yet. And there are signs on the horizon that things look bad, but not any worse than I've seen for the past 15 or 20 years. Believe me, it always looks like the end is right near and everything's going to fall apart and this the planet and the stock market's going to crash. Just so many things. I've heard them over again. And sad to say, it's like the boy who cried wolf. But you just need to pray by every alarm out there that's preaching doom and gloom. Now maybe you think I am, but I'm not. We know Yeshua is returning to earth and going to set up his kingdom. We know this is coming. We know the tribulation is eventually coming, but we know no man will know when. So make a plan, save money. Mostly, those are the physical things. Most important thing is get right with your Father and Yeshua in heaven. Be praying, be studying the Bible, asking them for wisdom, asking them to protect you so that you're not deceived by anybody, even somebody like me, somebody who looks like you can trust them. You might not be able to. You need to understand what it says in the Bible so that you can defend yourself and your family from people who are going to deceive you, quoting the Bible. That's what Satan loves to do. He quotes the Bible to people and he twists the scriptures. You need to pray, ask for wisdom, study the Word so that you're not deceived. So prepare yourself, but you need to prepare yourself financially too. And so you can teach English in many countries around the world. If you do have a BA or a BS and you have no other way and you can't think of anything else to do, I haven't done this personally, but I know that if you have a BA or BS, the Peace Corps will accept you and they will actually teach you a foreign language depending on which country you go to. They'll give you a certain amount of money every month and they'll take care of you. At least there's 2 years of a way to get out of the country to serve for the United States. At least you hopefully will be helping people and you'll have a way to make a living and be able to survive and live out of the U.S. if you're a single person and you have a BA or a BS degree or higher. I've heard that if you have less of a degree, if you are very insistent and ask and I guess write to them a lot and prove to them that you would be a good candidate, they might accept you. But in most countries in the world, they want to learn English. Everyone wants to learn English, no matter how unpopular the United States or England or any other country gets. Other people use English as the lingua franca, the universal language around this world. So you have a skill that they need, and they will pay a pretty good price for that when you get out of the country. You could write to me specifically if you want to know more details on that. But don't be alarmed, and if you're thinking about leaving the U.S., then make plans for it. That's all I'm saying. Save as much money as you can. When I left the country, I was able to, when I first decided to leave the country, it was about a year and a half before I left, selling my stuff at tickets and however I could, simplifying my life, lowering my cost of living, moving into a cheaper apartment, and I was able to save some money. When I made the decision to leave, I was about $3,000 in debt because of I'm sorry I got in debt. I asked the Father to help me, and I was able to pay off all that debt. And then the day that I left the U.S., which was June 10th of 1999, I had about $7,000 in my pocket. Granted, that's not a lot of money for some people, but obviously I did it, and you can do it, and you can make it work with that little amount of money. So, or I think you do, you know, make a plan and just ask like that. I went to first, like it there, and then I did in Peru. I did a good city. You can teach English there. You can live pretty cheaply. Able to live on about $450 a month, believe it or not, expenses, and I lived really well. The cost of living has gone up a little bit. Some of my friends tell me it's around $750 a month now for one person, but that's living well, living very well. The rest of the world is not a big jungle with Indians shooting bows and arrows. They have cities and educated people going to college, business people, supermarkets, malls, shopping centers. Everything is not a muddy dirt road in the middle of a jungle or in the middle of Africa somewhere. So just make your plans, educate yourself, do some research, try to get in contact with a lot of other people who are interested in doing this. Be very careful and cautious of who you join up with or who you talk to, and just ask the Father for wisdom. And He will bless you, and He will take care of you if you step out in faith. Do you have to ask the question, though, are you doing this just to save your skin? If that's the reason, don't bother. You're just going to lose your life. Are you doing this to obey Father? Are you doing this because you trust Him? Because He knows better than we do, and it says it in His Word 7 times. See my other video that talks about that, getting out of Babylon, flee out of Babylon. 7 scriptures in the entire Bible, New and Old Testament, tell us to leave Babylon. Get up, my people, get out of her. You can look right now in Revelation 18, verse 4. But there are many verses in Jeremiah 50, 51, and in Isaiah. So you just save yourself and don't bother. But if you're doing it to please Him, and He wants us to get away from Babylon, because it is a bad place. Just like He told Lot and his family to get out of Sodom and Gomorrah. And just as He led Israel out of Egypt. And that's why you need to also when you read the Bible, start at the beginning of the book. That's how when you pick up a book, you start at the beginning. You don't pick it up and start 3/4 into the book, in the middle of the book at Matthew. Start at the beginning to get an idea of what Israel and that culture was like, because whenever Yeshua and the apostles were quoting scripture, they were quoting the Old Testament. The New Testament didn't even exist yet. So read Genesis, read Exodus. The book of Exodus is the outline for your and my life. Read Exodus, find out how we're supposed to live. Leaving Egypt is when we're leaving our life of sin. Going through the Red Sea is our baptism. And then going through the desert led by the column of smoke, which was Yahweh and Yeshua, that column of smoke and fire. That is us following them and being led by them. That's why you don't necessarily have to go directly to Israel. They didn't go directly to Israel. They wandered in the desert and they followed the column of smoke. They didn't wander. They followed the Father and the Son for 40 years. So we have to learn how to follow the Father's lead. We have to trust Him and do what He says and read His Word and understand what it says. Read this and you will see a map and how we are to live our lives and what our future is before we cross the Jordan River to the Promised Land, which symbolizes the kingdom of Yahweh and the kingdom that Yeshua will be the king of. And that is where we are going, to that kingdom. But we need to learn what the Word says so we can share it with other people. Because prophecy and knowing about Babylon and America is not the goal of our life and is not the most important thing in our lives. It's a small part in a sense. Salvation in Yeshua Messiah is the most important thing. To be born again, to have His Spirit in us, to be letting His mind be in us and knowing what His Word says so we can follow that and do what it says. Yahweh bless all of you. Study your Bibles, pray and ask wisdom, and wish many blessings upon all of you.